Hey, seventh grade. So our learning target today is I can calculate simple interest. So we're going to talk about interest today. Things like loans from banks, whether you're borrowing or earning money. So what is simple interest? Simple interest is money that you pay or that you earn on the principal. Now, if it's money that you are given that you earn, it's a good thing. If it's money that you have to pay, it's kind of a bad thing. So it kind of works both ways. Most often, it's a negative experience for us when we talk about interest. Very rarely is it a positive experience. So, what is simple interest? We have this formula that says to get the simple interest, the amount of money that you earn, you multiply the principal times the rate times the time. So this formula is P times R times T. That's all multiplication there. P times R times T. That gives us the interest of the amount of money that you make. So here's our first example. In example one, let's say that you have $100 in your bank account. You have a 10%, you're earning 10%, and you're going to keep that money in there for 2 years. So this would be a really good situation for you. This is not really reality in the current 2006, but we'll go ahead and have you start off with a positive experience with your banking. So we have the interest formula of to earn the interest or calculate the amount of interest earned, you would take the principal multiplied by the rate multiplied by the time. The rate is a percentage and the time is always measured in years. So the interest then would be equal to the principal, which the amount of money that we're going to start with here is $100 that we start with. The rate is measured at 10%, so we're saying 10 over 100. And the time that we're going to have the money in the account is for 2 years. So we have principal times rate times time. So we're going to go ahead and multiply that in our calculator. 100 multiplied by 10%, 10 out of 100. We're going to keep ours in fraction form today. I know some teachers teach it in decimal form. We're going to go with fraction form, 10 out of 100. And then we're going to multiply that for 2 years because you're going to keep the money in there for 2 years. So we have 100 multiplied by 10 over 100 times 2 means that your interest that you're earning, the bank's going to pay you $20 at the end of 2 years. So we can talk then about something called balance. The balance means how much do you have after. So if you had 100 to start with and you earn 20 in interest, that means your balance would be $120. So we would say this is your interest that the bank's going to pay you, and then this would be your balance of 120. So that's kind of how interest works. Principal times rate times time when we talk about simple interest. Okay, so there's example number one. We start with $100. What happens if we change that down here? In example two, not really sure why it won't move down for me here, but in example two, there we go. Let's change it up a little bit and say, let's this time say that you start with $500 in your savings account. We're going to go ahead and say there's our word principal, how much you start with. The account earns 3.5% interest, that's the rate, and it says that it's happening per year. Okay, per year means for 1 year, but it's asking us to calculate for 3 years, so there's our time. So using our formula, we have interest equals principal times rate times time. How much money would I earn on this account? So the interest would be 500. Right, interest equals 500 is the principal, the amount that you start with. The rate is a percentage. It's 3.5%. So we're really saying 3.5 out of 100, 3.5%. And the time, the amount of time that we have that money in there is for 3 years. We have principal times rate times time. So 500 times 3.5 over 100 for 3 years. Multiplication problem. The amount of interest that we would earn then is $52.50. That's the amount of interest that the bank's going to pay us after 3 years. So that's like bonus money for us. So the next question in part B is asking about what's the balance in the account. Now, if I'm going too fast, make sure you pause that video. What's the balance after 3 years? So how much money will I have now? Well, you started with a principal of 500. You add the interest that the bank's going to pay you because they're saying thank you for letting us use your money. And that's what's called the balance then. So we just add those, gives us a total of $552.50 would be our balance at the end of 3 years. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and pause that video and watch it again. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving on. So example 3, Let's go ahead and before we even read the example, let's write down our formula. Principal times rate times time. That's the interest that we get. So it's either a good thing or a bad thing. If we're borrowing the money, it's a bad thing. If it's our bank account, it's a good thing. So you have $1,000 in your savings account. That would be the principal, how much money you start with. The account, be careful on this one, the account earns 100 in interest. So there's our interest right there. Actually, we're going to change that now. This will be the first time that we know the interest value is $100. Okay. We don't know the rate, but we know the time was 4 years. Time was 4 years. So we have principal times rate times time. You'll notice in this problem it's going to turn into hand method because that variable r is stuck in the middle of a bunch of stuff. So we're going to have to get rid of it. All right, so before we get to continue to solve, we're going to combine some things. We're going to use this multiplication of 100 times 4 and kind of clean that up. Using a commuted property, we know we can flip some things around. 100 times 4 is 4,000. I'm sorry, I meant to say 1,000, not 100. 1,000 times 4 is 4,000. The variable there is r, so we have 4,000 times r on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, we have just this 100. Hand method's going to kick in. We're going to solve for the variable r. To get that r alone, we're going to divide by 4,000. Copy, paste. On the left-hand side of the equation, we have 0.025. On the right-hand side, we have the variable r. So we got the r alone. The goal, though, is that rates are percentages. And right now, I just have a decimal here. How do I get from a decimal to a percent? You should know from 6th grade math that you have to multiply that by 100 to convert to a percent. So 0.025 multiplied by 100 would be 2.5%. That is the rate that the bank is going to pay you. 2.5%. That's what we're looking for. What is the annual interest rate? We just solved to 4.5%. That was a hand method question because the variable r was stuck in the middle. Okay, meet me on the top of the next page. On the top of the next page, number 24. On page 24, example. Go ahead and write down the formula here. We're talking about interest today. Interest equals principal times rate times time. We're going to talk about what we plug in for, what we solve for. Not sure if it's a hand method question or not because we don't know if the variable is a loan. So we have this deposit of $300 in the account. So that's our beginning amount, principal, $300. The rate is 7%. By definition, that's 7 over 100. It's asking about what's the balance in the account after 9 months. Well, the time here has to be measured in years. So 9 months is not even a full year. Now, this is a tricky part. 9 months is not even a full year. So what part of a year is 9 months? We would say 9 months is 9/12 of a year. 9 months out of 12 months. So 9/12 of a year. So you have to put 9/12 in. We're going to calculate the interest first before we figure out how much money is the balance. Principal, 300. The rate is 7%, which is 7 out of 100. And the time is not in years right now. So we have to say, well, then that's 9/12 of a year. 9 months is 9/12 of a year. You could reduce and call it 3/4 if you like, but we're going to go with 9/12. So we're going to go ahead and multiply that stuff on the right-hand side. So in your calculator, you have 300 multiplied, parentheses, 7 over 100, multiply, parentheses, 9 over 12. Go ahead and type all of that in. The interest that the bank is earning is not a lot of money, and you should be thinking about, well, why wouldn't it be a lot of money? Well, you're only keeping it in the bank for 9 months. You shouldn't earn a lot of money. It's $15.75 is the interest. Make sure you've read the question because the question is actually asking what is the balance after 9 months. So remember, we have to go back and add. So if we start with $300 as the principal, we add the interest of $15.75. We add those up and we get $315.75, and that is called the balance. The balance in the account would be $315.75. Your homework for tonight is to do page 24, 25, and 26 on simple interest. Have a fabulous night, 7th grade.